Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Leigh, welcome to the podcast, brother. How the hell are you?
Right? Good. Thank you for having me on.
I was so grateful to be reached out to yourself and sort of the team that you're working with when you got into writing Up in Smoke. Give us a little better background. Give us that sort of elevator pitch of why you first started writing it, and then I've got a whole page full of stuff I want to get into because I love reading the book.
Thank you. As you know, I've come from a third generation family of firefighters with my uncle, my granddad, and my father as well before me. And I think collectively we've got 111 years service in the family. So my granddad, towards the end of his life, he was very mindful of such a fantastic story. And he said, like, our family has a great heritage and a lineage in the fire brigade, and don't let our story die. And he was quite passionate about it, and it just got those cogs turning.
Yeah.
And when he passed away, I felt compelled to, in his honor, but more so for the family story, is to actually tell that story and what it means to be a firefighter. Because unless you're in the job, not many people know what's behind those red doors in their community fire stations, do they? It's just like it's almost like it's a fire station, and that's as much as they think, unless they actually need them in their worst moment.
And even then, they don't really get an understanding for it. We have an idea.
Sure.
And a real admiration for people in the emergency services. But as we were kind of speaking before we came on here, now with the world of social media and all this sort of stuff, a lot of places have kind of locked their doors, and certainly in the emergency services, they've gotten petrified. You and I were talking yesterday in our own different journeys about how we've slowly sidestepped some minds and people that are just absolutely petrified of people seeing maybe the truth, you know what I mean? And like the truth is something to be scared of, and we're petrified of appearing unprofessional. But when we were kids, and like we're talking about your grandfather, they were the stories that actually made the job. Do you know what I mean? I always thought it was the job that made the people, but it ain't. It's the people that make the job. It's the quirky, crazy, just ridiculous freaks and crazy kooks that come into this role. It is, man. It's just a bunch of crazy bastards on a watch, isn't it? And your job, as a crew or watch commander is to protect them and create an environment of safety where those just unique people can exist. Today's episode was brought to you by our good friends at Williamwood Watches. We put so much thought into the people that we partner with on the podcast, and Williamwood Watches has been with us since the beginning. This is a company that's got authenticity baked into every aspect of its fire service traditions. Now, they have 6 different collections now. In October, they brought out their new Fearless collection. Some refer to this as the dark side, and it's their first field range watch. Now, I've been speaking to some people in the past who have got that Williamwood watch for a specific occasion for something really smart, really classy. But the best thing about the Fearless collection is that it's built to be worn in active surroundings. It's got that compact, rugged aesthetic on your wrist. One of the biggest things people have commented on, if you go have a look at their socials, is the Firefighter helmet case back. They always do something special with the back of all of these. Now, before this, my favorite was the Triumph collection, but if you go over and have a look at this one, they've pressed into the back of each watch the UK Firefighters helmet. It's got the glass visor where you can glance through and actually see the movement of each watch. Now, again, if you're unfamiliar with it, the massive core of all these Williamwood watches is the upcycling of firefighting materials. And the Fearless collection has got a 100-year-old British Brass firefighter helmet melted down and placed inside the crown of the watch. That's exactly the same as they have with all of their collections. But this one also features repurposed black fire hose, which is a really rare one for these. So go over and check out the brand. I myself went for the Valiant watch. I've had this for a couple of years now. Really nice. I've got it in the red strap, but I'm also giving some serious consideration to the new Fearless collection. There's a whole range of payment options. Go over and take a look at them. Williamwood Watches, Johnny and the team are there to give you that experience. Whether you're thinking of a retirement gift, you got something special to celebrate, or you have just started your emergency services career, go over and check them out, williamwoodwatches.com. The best way to support the podcast is to support our sponsors, so please take a click in the notes below. Now back to the show. We've gotten away from sharing that as much, and some of it's to do with like pride as well. Some people, they're a bit like, oh, who the fuck am I? And I'll look a bit of a dick, you know what I mean? They're not as forefront as sharing their stories. But then the real sadness is I mean, imagine if your granddad had been on the podcast, not this podcast, but if something like this had existed. And it's always lovely to read a book. It's always lovely to hear an audiobook, but to really hear that person, hear that passion and hear them talk. And that is the thing, because that's why we got into it. We sat around a watch table, or we heard somebody at a barbecue, or we met somebody and they were like, yeah, I've been in a fire service, I do this. And you're like, fucking hell, that's a job. That's a fucking job. You know what I mean?
And not many people outside of that circle can fully appreciate that. And because it's, I feel so passionate about it. And I didn't want to keep that to myself. I wanted to tell that story. So I started pursuing what content would look like, and thinking about what I would put in there. And first off, it started off as an idea of a serious story. And then as I started to consider more and more, I thought the fundamental thing, that thing that where when you get up in the morning, or you're just about to go to work on a night shift, you can't wait to get there. Yeah. And it's not so much because of the job. The job is great, it's interesting, and no ever two days are ever the same. But it's the people. It's family away from family. And I'd say to my wife, "Oh, I'm off to work." She's like, "No, you're not. You're going to the fire station."
And your partner's got a very intimate insight, because obviously she works in emergency services as well, so she's got a keen insight of what you're doing there.
She tells me what to do at work, and she tells me what to do at home. She's an amazing woman. But it's and I thought, these people are some of the funniest people I know. Yeah. And it felt right that this book, the context of it should be around humor, because without humor, our job would be impossible. Yeah. Some of the awful things we see, and some of the awful things we have to process emotionally and mentally and physically sometimes. You need to be able to fucking laugh at that shit. If you don't, you'll just go bang. And I felt that should be the context of the book. So I started thinking about the content and funny stories, funny anecdotes. Many people from around the country that I know chipped in as well with some incredible stories. A lot got left on the cutting room floor because it was almost too funny.
That must have been fucking rough. To see that side of it, because like you say, putting a book together, so many people talk about it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm writing a book. It's such a colossal thing to do. It's on my list. It's probably on number fucking 17 at the minute. Do you know what I mean? Just in that way of dumping everything down. But still, it's just, I mean, how long did this take?
I guess from start to finish, and there's a really interesting, I'm very spiritually connected, and as I'm sure you are, and the process was about 3 years, but right at that beginning, when I was having those thoughts about doing this, I was approached by a guy called Jamie Coleman, who at the time was an editor for Pam Macmillan. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm just scouring Twitter looking for a firefighter to write a book." And I was like, "Fuck off! Who you been talking to?" Yeah. My conscience. And it was like, when you come off of a conversation, you're like, "What just fucking happened there?" This is too coincidental. It's almost like beyond the grave, my grandfather has influenced that coming together.
But it's also scary as well, maybe, when somebody goes, "Go on then, I'll do it with you." And you're like, shit, fucking hell, I've got to do it now. I'm being held accountable and I've got to do shit.
I know. I had genuinely had no idea how intense, not intense, how committed that journey would have to be in putting those stories together. I transcribed a lot, and then it formed different shapes throughout the journey, and it got moved around. The start finished, the end finished in a different way, and I think I got up to about a seventh edit on your manuscript before, and it was a very fluid.
Does it not just become a big confusing fog after such a point, though, because you feel like, oh god, I'm just, because you know it all so well yourself, but you're also like, obviously you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, but then also having somebody that's not lived that story and isn't in the emergency services try and give you feedback and try and that must have been difficult?
So as you can imagine, in those first edits, it was very fire brigade orientated language.
Yeah.
And when you come away from that and you step back and you try and read that in layman's, through the eyes of a layman, you think, oh, they're not going to get it. They won't understand that. So you had to then manipulate the information in there so that it could be understood by someone that isn't in the job, but also understood by someone that is in the job, because you want them to enjoy it as well. So there was 100%. a balance to be struck, and it was a fucking hit. It was like, oh, how am I going to do this? But Jamie Coleman, he moved to Orion Publishing, which is under the Hachette umbrella, which is an incredible opportunity for me to land on that. And he was great. The editorial feedback that he gave me, and he was like, oh, have you thought about maybe shifting this to here and that to there, or including this and retracting that, and it just became what it is today. And as the progression went on, and we will talk about mental health awareness, but there was never at the beginning that aspect of what we do wasn't in there, wasn't in my I wasn't consciously going to write about that. But as I started thinking about incidents, funny and sad, I had some dark moments writing that book, because I felt that we needed to give people a snapshot of some of the difficult things that we experience, just so that they can start to maybe have an understanding of what it is to do the job, given the terrible.
Because they're the gaps where people usually fall through. And I think, as we sort of spoke about before we came on, that's where these days we aren't building, we're not coming from the same environments. We've both got kids, and we're not coming from the same upbringings. We're not having shit jobs when we're younger, where we're getting that character building moments of, someone pointing a finger in our face, or doing fucking 3 paper rounds or emptying skips and stuff like that. We're not having as many shit jobs at 12 and 13 years of age that builds that sort of character. And that sort of character, I think of it as like a big wheel. So when you do hit a bump, or when you do hit a crack in your life, if you've got a big wheel, you can kind of roll through it, and you can take a loose elbow and go, oh, that fucking hurt a little bit, but okay, I'm gonna pull this out of the mental cookie jar and crack on. Whereas I feel like we don't have that exposure, we don't develop that muscle as much, for many, many, many socio-ecological reasons and societal challenges that we probably haven't got time for. But I worry more about that. And like I say, when I read your book, it's good that you don't just gloss over those moments, because they're the gaps that people fall through. And as we're seeing the younger generation come into the job now, I've shared a number of times, only a month ago, one of my colleagues took his life, and we've had a number of people do it. And you just think, and he was only in his early 30s, and you think, the fuck? Do you know what I mean? But so many more people could be lost and probably will be lost. And you can't go with the idea of, well, I don't see why, because no one seemed to struggle with this when I was younger. It was a whole different world back then. A whole different world.
For sure. And that's why I placed a massive emphasis on humour, because when you come into the job, certainly, I know I was brought up around it, but when people come in and they don't really understand the dynamics of a watch, and the humour forming a massive part of it, and banter and piss taking, but not in an offensive way.
Or what you said yesterday about your dad on one of your first handovers. Your dad is that safe for this podcast? That's Fuck yeah, of course it is.
He would always tell a new recruit, and it was funny, because whenever anyone came to the station, male or female, on their first day, he'd done 35 years, he was part of the furniture, we'd all sit round for a cup of tea, and he'd come in and I'd be like, all right, Dad, and he'd be like, oh, a new person, brilliant. He's like, you're going to be in this job a long time, and you'll learn many things, but the one thing that you need to be, to understand, that all these firefighters around this mess table, and any other mess table that you'll grace ever in your career, you just need to understand this and know this: they're all cunts. In the nicest possible sense, this lot are all cunts.
They are beautiful,
it got a ruptured laughter, and it's just, people outside of the job, or perhaps not having an understanding of what that means, could find that offensive, but they shouldn't.
No.
It's they can be offended by it, but in that circle, in that moment, it's not offensive.
No. It's almost a term of endearment, a term of respect.
Sure,
and even with hazing and stuff like that, I mean, there was, even when I came into the job, there was really not bullying was a very isolated and small thing, and it was usually to do with one individual, whereas hazing and, getting bucketed when you're switching watches or switching stations or all that sort of shit, I would feel bad at times when people didn't get that, because it would mean they weren't really accepted by the team. It mean that no one really cared.
No, that's right. It's like it's inclusivity, isn't it?
It is, mate. Yeah, and that's where people have to come at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because it builds so much strength. It builds so much closeness within watches where you are, eating together, living together, going through some messy shit together, and also facing challenges in the communities that are just changing so much these days. The challenges faced by the emergency services are so complex and ever evolving.
And I thought about this whilst writing, and I came up with this idea. I'll run it past you and see if you think you agree. When you come onto a station, you're slowly introduced to banter. You're not, piss taking doesn't happen in your first minute. People take the time to get to know you. And
it happens around you as well, and not at you.
Yeah. And you almost become, it's like a handed down piece of education. And I believe this is where my understanding of it is that you are, you're invited and you're included in banter and piss taking, and you're almost nurtured into not taking life too seriously and being quite light-hearted, because ultimately the job you've joined is going to expose you to some very traumatic things.
Yeah.
And if you're offended by a little bit of banter, then you are going to be massively offended by the things that you go out there and see.
Yeah.
And I think just allowing you to find things funny and not be offended puts you in a good place for the terrible things that you're going to witness. And I think when employers are trying to employ people that are I think on a tick box, it's, do you have a sense of humor?
Yeah.
Right? And if you tick no, I don't think the job's for you.
Fuck no.
Because
there's a thing about trying to create professionals, and we're the definition of that word is very interpretive. Do you know what I mean? Professionals is not some, homogenous, non-personalized individual that is just clean shaven, pristinely dressed with no personality. How the fuck is the community going to connect with that? Well, there's an irony behind, like we say about trying to connect more with our communities and become more equal and diverse and inclusive, and then we say nobody say anything different from anybody else, everybody act the same. And you're like, it's a bit like there's a great meme out there that says the world says be yourself, no, not like that. Do you know what I mean? And you're just like, what the fuck are you on about? Be yourself. No, don't do that. Don't say that.
You're right. By recruiting the right, there's a thing I heard that everyone can be a firefighter. I disagree, wholeheartedly disagree. Everyone can apply. I'll take that. Everyone can apply to be a firefighter, but not everyone can be a firefighter. And if you haven't got a sense of humor and you are easily offended, then there is the risk, this may not be 100% of the time, but there is a risk that we have a mental health crisis in the waiting. It's going to happen. I think you have to have a certain kind of individual that comes into the job that ensures their longevity, a lengthy career, a career free of mental health issues. It takes a strong kind of character. Yes, some of that can be built with it once you're in the job and you are, are nurtured by your professional colleagues around you, and they will look after you. But it does take a certain kind of someone.
What I've been thinking lately, and again, when I spoke about, a couple of people that we've had on the podcast recently, I think we should do some more direct recruiting out of things like the military, because a lot of people go in the military only for a small period of time. You know what I mean? Maybe 5, 10 years, and then they come out. And I work with a great number of men and women who've got a military background who are really fucking great firefighters
Yeah.
because they've kind of got that discipline already. They get that sense of purpose. They've got that real dark humor, which is just so good for it.
Yeah.
And they can do things. They can do things consistently that are sometimes boring as piss, and they're really good at it. Do you know what I mean? They're good at following orders.
Yeah.
They don't take life too seriously, and those sorts of individuals are really, really good because, like you said, you've got to stand at the forefront of that recruitment process. I feel like sometimes we're clutching at straws and fucking accepting anybody, whereas you're like, once they're in, it can get enormously costly. I mean, some of the biggest costs to services these days are mental illness and mental health, and just physical health and long-term sickness.
I don't think the modern fire rescue service is, the idea of a modern fire rescue service is wonderful. It has its merits. You look at the fire services of my granddad's era, and not so much my dad, because that changed in the 80s with regard to females being in the fire service as well. But in my granddad's era, it was, I can hear him now. Women in the fire brigade, they should be at home doing cooking and cleaning. That was the attitude then, wasn't it? And I love that. You're right. I love that you have this broad representation on a fire engine now. Not so much, there's still a long way to go, but resembling, or people in the community can see themselves on the fire engines because there's white or black women, or Asian men and Asian women. You've got this mixed, diverse representation on a fire engine now that connects with the communities you serve. But it has to be the right kind of us, not just anyone. So I do.
I think we've done a lot of that hard work now, and I think that we're going to see the fruition of it. As you and I both know, so many people, yourself included, in the next maybe 5 or 10 years are retiring in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and we're doing so much recruitment now. And I think all of the efforts that we've been doing over the last decade or so are going to show those fruits now. So what I want us to do is recalibrate at this point and not keep leaning into the, oh, come on, how about if we have people with one leg? Well, no, that's not going to fucking work, is it? Well, what if we just change the fire engine? No, just fucking slow down. The right people are coming, all right? Fucking slow down. We don't need to keep leaning that way. Now let's come back in the middle with training standards, with that work ethic, with that command structure and that discipline, and let's get really good with the people that we've got in the job now. Let's not keep leaning into this woke side of the world, because we'll just completely lose. Somebody said, I was talking to a chief fire officer the other day, and, and one of his colleagues was with him, and I said, you seem, they were doing some strange shit over there, and he says, oh, you seem quite open-minded here. And the guy next to him, I don't know what his rank was, but he was like, this fucker's so open-minded, his fucking brains fell out. And I was like, just when he said that about the chief fire officer, I'm guessing he did work there, but I was like, that's what we've got to be careful of sometimes. You know what I mean? We can be open-minded, but let's fucking live in the realm of reality. Let's try and stay recalibrated.
There's a huge balance to be had, and that's why I recently got involved in interviewing new recruits or potential new recruits.
Good man.
Because I felt, as a watch commander, I felt that I needed to have some influence over who our next generation of firefighters are. And I loved the people that sat in front of me, and I had a prescribed set of questions that I asked people, so that it was fair.
Did you stick to them?
Everyone gets asked the same questions, and I would, at the end, I would ask my own question. I'd be like, tell me your top 3 things about you. It's not part of the interview. It's just, I would like to know just a bit more about you and how you see yourself. Give me your top 3 things. And they'd be like, oh, that's a good question. And you know what? I love the people that chose humor and funny as the number one thing, because straight away, it obviously didn't influence the scoring of the process, but it just gave me an insight into who they were. I love those kind of individuals that have got that much confidence that in a formal fire service interview where, you know, you're either going to be successful or unsuccessful after this interview, you could come up with buzzwords for that. You know, I've asked you that.
There's a fucking lot. You know, there's people with scripts out there and all that sort of shit. And that's what worries me. You know, we don't want to get into that. We don't want nepotism, I agree, where you're like, oh, he's my mate, so I'm going to get him in. But also, we don't want to fall completely into this cookie cutter script, because then we'll miss everything that's special about those. None of the freaks will get in, and we need the freaks, because we are freaks. Most of us are already like, you know what I mean? What was I forget what it was. Who was the guy? Was it? I said, you know, I won't want to be part of any club that'd have me as a member. Was like, well, I forget who the guy was, but that's effectively the fire service. You're just like, crazy bastard, but I would go to war with him. You know what I mean? I'd have him on my boat, because these are the people that we want. And they're the people we need to be aiming for. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, we spoke yesterday about the London's Burning. And you look at the broad set of characters from every walk of life. They were all freaks, and it was spot on. It was spot on with the characters, and they all made such a fantastic, wonderful family dynamic. And you know, I'll attest that all the watches that I've been on have had one of the same. You know, there's always you know, someone that's always sick, or someone that's very theatrical. You know, and it just the composition of it all is just makes it a wonderful mix, and makes life very interesting at work. And
there's the super fit guy, there's the hilarious person, there's the piss take, there's the proverbial punch bag who's like either more intelligent than everybody else or they're something like that, but they're just fucking hilarious. There's the person that knows everything about the job and's got no fucking personality. Do you know what I mean? There's all of those people, and that's what makes it. And there's always the weird person who's doing something fucking mad. And like, what did you do at the weekend? Is like, oh, I swam around the fucking UK or some shit. You know, what the fuck? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm going camping in Cyprus. Fucking play, mate. All right, yeah.
It's incredible, and I think we touched on you touched on the bullying aspect. You know, I've been very lucky and not witnessed any of that terrible stuff that has been documented in many fire and rescue services around the country. And there is always an individual that abuses their position of authority, or is just that, you know, that they are few and far between, that Mr. or Mrs. Nasty that is just quite toxic, and is guilty of bullying, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, whatever. You know, and I make a very good point in my book that there is no place for that.
No,
absolutely no place for it. And I'm glad that these people that have been found guilty and have lost their jobs because of their behaviour have the justice was served. And but when we talk about banter, it's banter based on acceptance, not banter based on ignorance.
And
that has to be, you know, emphasized for all those people, that the woke community, that, you know, there's a place for wokeness, absolutely,
100%.
Yeah, absolutely, but it shouldn't be used to like drive a personal agenda. It's, you know, there has to be an appreciation of a different way of living, a different way of life outside of your way of life. And, you know, you can be offended by something, that's okay, that's absolutely fine. But if the thing that offended you isn't per se offensive, then don't claim that it is. You know, Ricky Gervais makes that very point about somebody coming up after one of his shows and said, oh, that whatever what you said was offensive. And he was like, but you're the only one coming to me and telling me this. If something was truly offensive, the whole audience would feel the same. Because that's what offensive is. But if you're saying that you're coming here and you feel offended, that's okay, but that's different. You have a right to be offended, but what was said isn't offensive. You know, it wasn't against a protected characteristic or whatever, you know, whatever context.
And I also think it's the intent behind it. as is probably evident from our conversation, I'm pretty fast and loose with language, and I'm the same everywhere. People say, "Oh, you're different at work than you are at home," and stuff like that. But for me, I'm not.
No,
Because even with my daughter, like, I'll let her use whatever language she likes, and people might hear that and go, "Oh God, really? Oh, bother. She's a horrible bloody child." She's not, because it's about the intent. Like, she'll say to me if I do something, or I fuck up, or I put my finger through the poo bag or something like that. She'll be like, "Daddy, you've been a bit of a dick," or she'll go like, or sometimes when I'm making tea, or she'll go, "You've fucked that up, haven't you, Daddy?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, baby, I absolutely fucked that up," because it's the intent behind it. You know what I mean? If she walked down the stairs and she was angry about something and she said, "Oh shit," which she's never done, it would be a different conversation, because then you're using that language with anger, and with you're trying to assert fear, or you're trying to oppress somebody, or you're trying to intimidate somebody. That is very different to me than, like you say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Do you know what I mean? Context. And again, that intent and offensiveness, is all about intent for me. And that's where we need to have, I always say to people, there's a great book called Radical Candor, which I'd suggest people go off and read. And it talks in that about connection first, then correction. Yeah. But I think so many people get that the other way around. They come in and go, Leigh, let me stop you there. Leigh, that was offensive. And you're like, you don't even fucking know who I am. Let's have let's build a bit of rapport first. And seek to understand. And then I can see where you're coming from. Because I always say right and wrong is just an opinion. It's never meant in the way that it's intended. That's why I much prefer like what we're doing. And I think the art of conversation is dying, because people just interact over text messages and email and social media. The way you write something, the way I read it, very fucking different.
Depends what mood you're in when you read it as well.
Absolutely.
If you're buoyant and life is so good and you couldn't be happier, you're going to read something and you'll be like, "Oh, that's okay, that's cool," Or if you're pissed off and angry at something, you'll read that in that context.
Absolutely, brother. I want to jump into some of the stuff, because obviously we're not going to give up the ghost with everything. We wouldn't have time to go through everything in the book, but there's a few things that really jumped out to me. I think a great place for us to start is probably one of the first risk inspections you went on when you first joined, and how that was your kind of entry into the services.
Yeah, I think it was always going to be at the front of the book. As you can imagine, I've not been on station long, and I was proud to go out in my cap in a formal way. We had caps back then.
I know a lot of services aren't doing dress uniforms anymore.
Epaulets and ties and it was a smart dress, and I couldn't be prouder. And we arrived at this nightclub and walked up the stairs. I can vividly see it now, and it was packed, and it was immediately obvious that it was all women, all drunk women, because on a during performance inspection, the idea is to go when it's operating at its maximum capacity, and that was between sort of 11 p.m. and midnight. Of course, they're all tanked up. They've been at it since 7 or 8 p.m. And we couldn't see anyone of any authority. And we thought, oh, we'll ask the DJ. So we started squeezing our way across the dance floor, and dressed like we were in that kind of environment, we were getting some attention. And the most attention we got was from the DJ, who put a spotlight on. And it was like, what are you doing, mate? What are you doing? It was like, "Ladies, your strippers are here." And we're like, "Fuck, are you fucking serious?" No.
Well, you probably look like lads on.
Yeah, well, of course you did, like the full Monty. And within seconds, it was like, we were stripped, and not like shirts taken off nicely. They're ripped off, buttons popped everywhere. I had my trousers ripped off. I was doing my best to hold my boxer shorts on. My cap had gone; that had been thrown across the bar like a frisbee. And we were all taken down. And I was, as I say in the book, I was just about to surrender my last bit of dignity. My boxer shorts were being hung on by a thread, and the managers the managers arrived, and he's like, "Fuck, like, listen, give me the microphone." He said, "This is the fire brigade. These aren't strippers." And our clothes, what was left of them, were slowly returned to us one by one. And I remember getting pinched on the arse, and it whispered in my ear, "Shame."
How old had you been at that point?
I was 21.
21.
21.
Hell, baby.
Some of the older hands thought it was funny. I was shell shocked.
Do you think it's the same with some people now? Because I often say, like, when we're driving down and you see some attractive people, men or women or whatever, when you're driving around, and I think, I'm like, mate, fucking duck your head down, because I don't want people to be disappointed when they look in. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not the most attractive person at all, but I try and keep myself in shape. I think being fit in the job, and I know you've done a number of stuff. You've done the World Firefighter Games and a few things. It's an important part to it. Yeah. And I always say, and I always taking the piss, it sounds like a bit of ego, but I'm like, just trying to keep the fucking dream alive, mate. Do you know what I mean? I'm just, for all these people that think people in the fire service are fit and healthy, I've got people on my watch with a physique like a fucking melted wheelie bin. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, shit the bed. Mate, they're going to be so fucking disappointed when you get off at that nightclub. Fuck me.
My few of my wife's friends recently become single, and they would say, like, oh, does your husband, has he got any single firefighters on his watch that might be looking for a girlfriend? And she'd be like, forget it. Like, I don't know I'm not sure what your conception of she said, I don't know what your conception of a firefighter would be. She said, but you're into like fit, good looking guys, aren't you? And I'm like, seriously? This is me and my watch you're talking about. But
I think that's becoming a thing again, as we see the growth of things like the World Firefighter Games, the Firefighter Challenges, or the bloody CrossFit community, and even just like, we were talking earlier about plant-based diets and stuff. I feel like the world is moving a little bit back towards that. Yeah. Because you imagine what it was like, for your granddad and for your dad. And even when we joined, Christ, that if someone told me when I first joined, every meal's a feast. And every day is an adventure, basically, in the fire service. Because every meal was a fucking feast. It's like you would buy special plates that you would not find anywhere else. Special plates from IKEA that were serving plates. And there would be a normal plates for breakfast, lunch, fucking 11sies and whatever else. And the amount we used to consume. You know what I mean? What was it like when you first joined?
It's the same. It was absolutely outrageous. There would always be too much cooked. And rather than put it in a few Tupperwares for another night, it was like, can we squeeze it onto a plate? And you'd sit down and be like, fucking hell, can't eat all that.
It's 3 fucking meals.
There's only 12 of us here. This is a fucking meal for 20. And our mess manager would be like, oh, just fucking eat it. And you would.
And then there'd be
you'd smash it and you'd be like, shit, oh, fuck, I can't move. And then you'd get a massive BA job somewhere where you have to wear a gas-tight suit, and you'd regret all that sitting in your stomach.
But that's really changed, hasn't it? I feel like, but there's a good and a bad to that. So, I mean, talk to me about what you think about watches eating together and cooking together and spending that time together, because that's dying a death in certain places.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky for the journey that I've had, because the mess has, and I speak a lot about that in the book, about the mess room being a sacred place. And in my service, it is, and I hope it always remains that way. We have healthy mess clubs where everyone chips in, and there's a big emphasis on eating together and drinking tea and coffee together in a mess. It's where your relationships are formed and maintained, and it's where trust is expressed, whether that's piss taking or just general interest in people's lives. Because it isn't until you sit down, like we just said, about face-to-face conversations and invest in that time in people, that you have that mutual understanding, and you understand people's differences, and not everyone will get on. There are characters that will rub each other up the wrong way, and that's okay. We're all different.
And that's almost the place to do it for me. Like, you can dissipate little frustrations around a table, and you can see little flare-ups in conversations. But because you're cooking or because you're eating together, it's not exactly like a direct confrontation. It's not like people squaring up in the fucking, in the bays or anything like that. It's little flare-ups, and you can balance that amongst the watch, and you can deal with it. Hey folks, just wanted to jump in with a quick piece around firefighter health and wellbeing. Now, we get a lot of messages and emails into the podcast around firefighter health and fitness, whether you are trying to join the fire service and pass them tricky fitness tests, if you are currently serving, or if you are coming up to that next chapter of your life, retiring from the emergency services. we get so many different questions around it. So in partnership with Fitness for the Frontline, we have come up with a series of guidance and programs specifically designed to reflect the physical elements of the role of a firefighter. So whether it's carrying an LPP across an overgrown field, lifting a ladder above your head under running it, or wrestling with cutting gear for 30 plus minutes at some kind of complicated RTC, our bodies are required to lift, push, and carry objects in very specific circumstances. That is effectively what Fitness on the Frontline focuses on, as well as the longer term aspects of overall health and wellness for our firefighters. There are focuses around strength, endurance, and overall conditioning, all achievable and relevant to our roles. Now, we are definitely not about to be smashing out world records or getting that beach body ready in 6 weeks rubbish. The systems and programs that we put in place are adjusted for people's current fitness levels, and they're not a prescriptive weight or a one-size-fits-all BS. We also take into consideration all the fitness testing for initial application and also for current firefighters who want to maintain and progress their fitness levels. It is very likely for myself personally that I'm still going to be a firefighter when I'm 60 plus, so longevity in the role is really important to me, and I know it is for so many people out there. The system has a built-in ability to adjust easily depending on the equipment you have available, your fatigue levels, or if you're coming off busy ass night shifts and you haven't got a lot of time to work out. You can record your results, log your weights, your body measurements. We've got all the facilities to do that. The system is yours to use how you want to train. We've taken all the fluff and the gimmicks and the BS away from most of the rubbish that you see out there. And this is designed by experienced operational firefighters and qualified people, including myself, with members of the team available to contact throughout the time you are within us in the program. If you ever get stuck, if you're starting to struggle, and also to celebrate those wins and achievements with you. It all starts with no obligation, 7 days worth of the programming, absolutely free. So whether you're joining, serving, or looking at the next chapter in your life, have a glance in the link for the podcast. Fitness for the Frontline is designed by firefighters for firefighters. Now back to the show.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I manage with humour, as you can probably guess.
Yeah.
And it works. It keeps people. You know, the watches that I've been in charge of. It's like a fear-free environment. You know, I'm not. If somebody does something wrong, whether it's in the mess, in the drill yard, in the bay, and it's part of some training or something, I won't chastise them or belittle them. I'll just use a little bit of humour to get the same message across, and they can have a little bit of a laugh at themselves. Other people have a little bit of a laugh at them, and they learn so much more because they feel like if they make a mistake in the future, the most that's going to happen is going to be a bit of piss taking, rather than you're for the high jump. Take your 5 gear off, go and sit in the, depending on what they did. Obviously, if they nearly killed someone, it'd be like, oh, fuck it, hold on a minute, all right. There might be some learning needs here, but that's touch wood. That's never happened.
Oh mate, I've had it. Fucking hell.
And it's I feel, and I believe that is an incredible managerial power to have. Being able to use humor as a managing method. Some of the great people, great leaders of the world, Barack Obama, incredible humor, incredible sense of humor.
Great orator, great speaker.
And was never afraid to use humor. Like, he didn't have to think about it. He had that much confidence in his ability to be funny and not offensive.
Yeah.
That it would be natural for him to make fun of something, knowing how it would land and how it would be received.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm confident that I can manage that way. And, you often hear managers, senior managers, or any manager that is responsible for people. You know them, I know them, that are afraid. It's like, oh, can I? Oh, I'm not sure I could say that. I'm not sure I can laugh at that. And it's like, fucking hell.
How do we keep that characteristic going up the chain then, without forcing it into the closet where people feel like, if I am professional, then I'm not this, or if I'm professional, then I'm not fucking human. Do you know what I mean? That is a difficult one, because I've been encouraged 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years, and as I'm sure maybe you have or haven't, to go and do your station managers and to go and apply for this, apply for that. But I can't at the minute find anybody at that level who I feel is sincerely authentic and happy and really, they speak about the best days as though they're behind them and they missed. And I feel like people like yourself or others won't necessarily go for those levels of promotion, but then if the good people don't do it, the bad people will. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying all people that go for a promotion are bad, but they will do it, and then we will be at the behest of people that we're never not. Some people I see, they're not respected and they're not liked on their watches, and then they slowly go into some non-ops job, and then slowly make their way through, and then they become station group, area, DAC, fucking whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, you were always a bit of a shit firefighter. You weren't a team player, and now someone's accidentally giving you some fucking power.
Scary, isn't it?
Fucking scary.
Yeah, it's scary, and it's a shame. And I do. It's kind of an unspoken thing, isn't it? And I'm glad you've brought it up. I think as you progress, there's an expectation of your loyalty or affiliation. Dependent on
loyalty to what though. That's the thing.
Loyalty to the pound note. Yeah. So if you have to, there's an expectation that as you progress to this is just my opinion, obviously. Mm-hmm. As you progress to different levels, there's almost like it's almost like an unspoken. If we give you this position, this is how you are going to be expected to be. Take the money or leave it. And there's often that people.
The serial optimist in me wants to disagree with you, but I know there's just an overwhelming. But you're right. But I also think that we are that thing. So what I mean by that is, like, it only takes somebody like yourself. And obviously, we don't know each other tremendously well at all. But it only takes somebody like yourself or a few other people that I've had on the podcast. Well, a lot of other people that I've had on the podcast, to be fair, who are willing to take that step. And then all of a sudden, that's one more person that isn't of that ilk. Okay. And eventually, maybe the pendulum shifts.
I'll throw this to you then.
I'm not in that position, so I obviously don't know.
All right. You won't get those positions, will you? Surely those people, you won't get the opportunity, because it's almost like, given who you are and how you are, it's not for you. And I think you would get overlooked. Again, just my opinion. You would possibly get overlooked by someone that is willing to change. So you will never progress to that because of who you are and what you represent. I wonder.
I did have feedback like that. So it took me, I've done 22 promotion processes just to get to watch commander. So that's only fucking 2 promotions, and it's taken me 22 goes. And the watch manager one was the watch commander, was the one that on several occasions I had different individuals say to me things like, working with you is you're a bit too much of a gamble sometimes. It says there's loads of passion, there's loads of, and that's not because I've got anybody in trouble or fucked anything up, but my things like the podcast is a great example. Your outspokenness or your gregariousness or anything like that, you're either going to be really good for me, as in when I'm working for a group or commander or DAC or whatever, and they go, you're either really good or you're going to blow up in my face. Because we speak about diversity, but what we don't speak about is that mental diversity, that neurodiversity, that, I think we want people that look different but think the same. And I'm like, no, we don't want people that fucking think the same all the time, because that's how we get stuck in this group thing.
Yeah, I'm blessed in my service that we have got people at all levels, group, area, senior leadership team, the DEP and the chief, that have got a different way of thinking. They're very modern, almost like a contemporary management style. And touch wood, we've gone through an incredible journey of cultural change in the last 5 or 6 years, and we're in a good place, really good place. Those sense of humours through rank levels are there, and I've witnessed them. And I just hope that remains, and we do get to see a shift in, the likes of myself progressing and having that influence, because, a happy place of work is a productive place of work. A happy place of work with humour in its foundations is safe. It's healthy. It's the foundations as well of trust and respect.
It's always the goal for me. I want people to enjoy coming to work.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
26 years on, I still, my alarm on the morning of my first day shift, my alarm will go off and I'll be like, I'm going to work. Still 26 years in, I still have that feeling. And I'm blessed. I am blessed to have that feeling. And and I know it will continue. Now, my dad retired after his 30 years. He retired in the November, and then in the April, his wonderful idea of having one of the best fire and rescue service heritage museum in the UK was born, and he was made the curator of that. And he done another 14 years, and he retired in March of last year. I beg your pardon, March of this year, after 44 years service.
Where was he the curator at then? Sorry.
So the fire museum within our service.
Got to have him on. He'll be an absolute fascinating bloke to have a conversation with.
What he doesn't know about the fire and rescue service.
Ain't worth knowing.
Pre-war, post-war, Victorian times. Yeah, it isn't worth knowing. He actually gave me this the term on the run or off the run.
Yep.
Do you know where that comes from?
Yeah.
Do.
Yeah. So when they used to have the carts, it's whether or not, because to help the horses get it going. They used to have it on a little bit of a run so that when they released it, it would come down. If they had an issue with one of the trucks, they would take it.
So cool.
Off the run.
I know, and I'm glad you know that. And he taught me that, and I was like, fucking hell.
Most people never know that, and we use it all the time on our checks and our systems and everything like that. Most people never know where it comes from.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, when they used to call people a book on the watch. That came from London as well. You know, there's so many things. I mean, your dad had fascinate us with all this sort of stuff.
He'd be in his element, and he is an absolute legend. And he was awarded British Empire Medal in the Queen's Jubilee Honours, the Platinum Jubilee this year.
Fuck hell. So that was surreal.
Just for his service, quite surreal. To find out that he got it was just amazing, fitting. Worthy. He'd earned it. His career, his fire service career, is huge. In terms of length and commitment and enthusiasm, and still on his very last day, he was still as enthusiastic as he was on his very first day. And over the course of his career, towards the latter part, and then through the 14 years service within the Heritage Museum, he was chauffeuring, call it what you, I don't know what they're called, but caskets of past firefighters that had passed away, retired members who the fire service was the biggest thing in their lives, and the families come to the service and said,
they do that for a lot of people. Do they do that? Because up down the UK, they can bring turntable ladders and stuff.
Our service has got a very old turntable ladder, and my dad has done 40, I'm going to say probably, I'm sure that the year's service 44, and the funerals that he's done is 44 as well to date. Completely voluntarily, just to give those families that one final moment of pride that their dad, uncle, brother, grandfather, whoever it is, they're in that coffin on the back of that fire engine, taking that one last shout, and just ringing. I've sat in the passenger seat with him, and I look at my dad and I think, you're a fucking legend.
Fuck yeah.
You're just, you're not just my dad. You're my hero. You're my best friend. And just to see the cortege of firefighters lined up at these
and we should do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Not even just for the respect of the people in the job, but also just to demonstrate to the communities and stuff, especially with regard just to the medal that your dad received as well. Nurses, police officers, doctors, all of these frontline staff that don't get paid what they should get paid, and the conditions and all that sort of stuff. And that's why so many of them can lose that sense of purpose, or lose that sense of fulfillment with the job, because it's not fucking easy. And you do have to question sometimes. A lot of people do. That's why so much of it runs on passion. I mean, what advice or what sort of things did your dad used to say, or your granddad, about how did they last 30 years? I mean, even yourself, 26 years through. Well, how do you stay motivated with it? How do you stay enthusiastic? How do you stay away from the pessimist? How do you protect your mindset? What are you doing? Because I'm 16, 17 years, whatever it is in. And I always say, people said, oh, you'll feel different after 5 years. And they said, oh, you'll feel different after 10 years. And on it goes. And I just think, I worry, when is that going to happen? And if it's going to happen, and how do you make it through?
Interesting question. obviously I've got the advantage of having that lineage in the service, but those that come in, I believe
people that had to get the job off their own back. What's advice for them?
So so do you know what? It all comes down to, I think, and you might agree or disagree. It is all dependent on the enthusiasm that your watch officers, mainly your officer in charge, keeps you engaged. Isn't a grumpy shit. He's motivated. He keeps every day interesting. He keeps every day funny. He keeps every day engaged and incorporating all manner. I don't know, whatever it is. Having decent downtime or social events. When you've got a decent watch and a decent officer in charge, that is the building blocks at the beginning of your career. We all know a handful of people that we can say, do you know what? I remember them from the beginning of my career and they shaped me.
Yeah.
They shaped me because it's quite easy to drift onto a watch or get posted to a watch with all the enthusiasm in the world. And it's just full of miserable gits.
Yeah.
That are disengaged for whatever reason.
I mean, you were posted to a station, though, weren't you? When it was considered one of the second worst postings in the brigade.
Yeah, as you're reading my book, when I got there in the morning, one of the older hands was like, "Right, listen, don't look out of any of the windows in the station before 12 p.m." I'm like, "What the fuck's he talking about?" And it just, 5 minutes pondered, and I was checking some gear on the truck, and I was like, I need to ask you what, I don't know what you mean. Why can't I look out of the window in the morning? He says, because you'll have fuck all to do in the afternoon.
Fucking hell.
Because it's so quiet. I was like, oh God, this is a terrible posting for a new recruit. But that said, it was a quiet station, only one appliance, but it was full of incredible individuals who were so engaged, so proud. I already went to the fire station with an attitude that my granddad gave to me and said, every day starts with a polished pair of shoes. Get your polish brush out, give your shoes a clean. And it kind of sets you up every day, start of every shift, day or night. I always polish my shoes. And I encourage people to do the same when they come on. You get the older hands who be like, if you want my shoes polished, you'll have to fucking polish them for me.
Some fucking people, yeah.
So I'll be like, come here then. And they'll be like, what? I'll be like, come on, I'll shine your shoes. Because I know that they'll be like, oh, all right. These haven't been fucking cleaned in 3 or 4 years, but go on. and they'll have a shiny pair of shoes on their feet. And when they look down, they'll be like, do you know what? I like them. And it's all about just changing that mindset. Yeah. And that's what I encourage people that come into the job that to find the people that are positive, connect with them more. You will have people with stories and they may be unhappy for valid reasons or just no reason at all. It's just who they are, but try not to gravitate towards them. And I think that you can, I'm blessed to have known some incredible officers, some incredible firefighters, and not just, my family story aside, they have given me that enthusiasm to get up in the morning, 26 years in, and still look forward to going to work. And I, in part of my managerial style is to keep things buoyant and engaged and, and interesting, because it enables you to get through a lengthy career, still enjoying it.
What about the aspect of physical endurance and the idea of being able to stay injury free? Because you did have an injury, quite a bad injury at one point in your career, reading through the book. How do you manage the physical aspect of it? And just give us a whistle stop tour of what actually happened on that night with the RTC.
Is this with the battery?
Yeah, that was a fucking nasty
so that,
one. I read that, I was like, shit. I expected to be coming on a call with you and you looking like the fucking Elephant Man or some shit.
And unfortunately,
you do look like you've been apple bobbing in chip fat, but I think that's probably just you as a person. Your wife's probably very understanding. You must be hung. That's what I'm saying.
Cheers. She'd laugh at that. She will laugh at that when she watches listens to this. So we've come so far, haven't we, with health and safety?
Too far sometimes, but yeah,
there are the individuals that you have to remind every now and again. But PPE is better. But I think just being mindful, and I will always, every incident I go to, I will always say to my lot, keep yourself safe. And it's from my granddad as well. He passed down this. I pay tribute to the actual phrase at the back of the book. My granddad would, every time he saw me, he'd say to me, "Son, one hand for yourself, one hand for the job." Nice. And it's
fucking
just
like that.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. And I'll say to my lot, we'll arrive at whatever, something that's going batshit crazy, explosions everywhere and cylinders, and they want to get stuck in, and I'm like, just chill out a minute. Yeah, you don't know what's in it. People store all manner of fucking mad shit
especially in these days. You have not got a fucking clue. You got no clue what's going on next door.
They don't, these things that cause us the biggest problems at the moment are diversified sites, where you've got a farmer with a huge bit of land, and he says, like, if you want to rent a percentage of that land, you can do what the fuck you want on it. And over a course of 3 or 4 years,
most of the time it's an illicit drugs factory. Every now and again it's fucking something weird as well.
Next to 20,000 bottles of Caligas. And I'm always like, just have that in my mind. One hand for yourself, one hand for the job. Use what you can for cover. You don't need to get as close as you're getting. You can come back and you can fucking hide. There's no shame in hiding. You can do the same. You can have the same effect, but fucking stay behind something. And you have to have one eye on your health, because you're a long time injured and you're a long time dead. It was just a freak accident for me, where we'd put the fire out and we'd opened the bonnet, and I think it's just that balance of mixture of heat and air and fuel, and the battery just coincidentally, as I opened the bonnet, exploded. And when I'd had my visor down at that point. BA, back when I joined, you kind of wore BA on a car fire if you wanted to. Do you know what I mean?
Nobody wore BA on a car fire. I always think about the amount of skip fires we went to, where you would just stand over the top of the skip with the open end, and just fucking bellowing in your face. And you're just like, oh, fucking hell, what the fuck is in this skip? I don't know. It's a piss load of tyres, cables, and asbestos.
The flames are blue.
Fucking whatever.
The smoke's green. It fucking can't be good for you. But it just exploded, and I was lucky that my lot was so switched on, and it was just like copious amounts of water. And that saw me visit A&E for a few hours, which the nurses loved. A cubicle full of firefighters, men and women.
The boss going,
they loved it.
Fucking paperwork here, dickhead. Be all right, fine, dickhead.
And this is these are the risks that we face, and people, the general public, probably have an appreciation of some of the dangers we face, but there are a lot of fucking dangers, aren't there? Around every corner.
And to be honest, I think we're behind the game now, because we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the size. A lot of our, backroom staff and our research and development and all of our training departments are just trying to keep their head above water, to keep people competent and keep people up to speed. But when we look at like electric vehicles and we look at all the stuff that's coming out, we really are behind the curve on like, how do we deal with this stuff? Fucking not sure. Just like try and put a safe system of work together and don't fucking die.
It's electric vehicle fires. No, I'm not going to touch wood because it'd be interesting to go at one.
Yeah, no, I've
But
been to them,
you
and
know,
even just not even just the vehicles, the amount of lithium batteries that are in everything.
yeah.
You know, when they're vaping off and causing
Look at
these
the
explosive
scooter,
environments.
the e-scooters are a big thing,
Scooters, mate. You know, batteries in torches, and there's lithium everywhere.
Yeah,
And half of this shit, and it's not the be all and end all, but yeah, it's just one example. And
yeah,
again, the amount of
yeah,
entrepreneurs out there who are
yeah.
starting little businesses in their homes and stuff like that, and you just have not got a clue what's
No,
in so many of these
I know.
places.
And that's the thing, you know. I remember being at the same sleepy hole that I went to. One of my first shouts. It was an old Ford Granada saloon, on a G plate, and I'd opened the boot. We'd put the fire out, but we popped the boot with a set of Clan Lucas, and in the back was one of those large fucking Caligas cylinders, which was like swollen. All the seams were just about to and you think, fuck, I've been stood around this for 20 minutes, putting this car out with this in the boot. And that's people's thought process is it goes as far as, that'll be right in there.
Yeah.
Not, if I put that in there and my car catches fire, what danger is that going to pose to firefighters? It's not, that's never going to happen, is it? Doesn't happen. That's it. That's the sort of shit that's in films.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they come out and go, oh, fuck. Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, and we see that with construction and people refitting buildings and businesses and just punching through walls and retrofitting living spaces and just no fucks given. Just a lack of education in general.
Yeah, that's all it is. That's all it is. Because I think generally speaking, if they were to be conscious or reminded or just given an education of the risks that it may pose, there'd be not all the time, but people that have second thoughts and go, "Oh fuck, yeah, actually that isn't a great idea." It's just people lack of thought.
As I was sort of reading through the book and sort of cycling through, mostly laughter, even with some of the sadder bits in it, to be honest, because I know where that comes from, and I can imagine, you know, when some of your writings and some of the footnotes. I love the footnote side of it. So just talk to me about that for a minute, because I love that as an addition. It was a real throwback to some of the favorite books I read when I was a kid, and I thought it added a real, not only a sense of humor, but also a sense of authenticity to it. It was like you putting yourself back into the book every time.
That's it. So, you know, I mentioned earlier that that myself and my editor were thinking of ways of having a balance so that firefighters understood the language, and members of the public that weren't in the job understood the language as well. Yeah. There needed to be. There were some things that I couldn't change. It just had to be read in firefighting terms. Yeah. But I felt that there needed to be a footnote just to address someone that perhaps, I talk about trucks or a motor. We know that that's a fire engine, but people are like, or a machine. Yeah. What's a machine? It's a fire engine. And I felt that there needed to be the footnotes at the bottom. Some of them are funny as well. There's some science in there as well. I felt when we were talking about
there's some science, there's some safety messages. It's a lovely little myriad, mate. We've covered the spectrum with it. It was really, it was a great touch. I'm definitely going to fucking steal it if I ever put my head out my arse and do something. 100% going to steal that. But really great, mate. Really great.
I think just with every and as the idea in the book progressed, I felt that the incidents that I attended, funny and sad, all had a safety message attached. And it was like, wow, this can be entertaining, informative, and fucking keep you alive. It's a mixture of things.
Mate, it's effectively kind of like that's almost a narrative for the podcast as well, to be honest, because I think to myself, all the people that I speak to, yourself are definitely a great example. Such wealth of knowledge and such important stuff to share with the world, not only of the emergency services, but certainly of the public, because we get a lot of public listening as well. And I'm like, but it's interesting. Do you know what I mean? And again, we talk about that professionalism. So many services go out there with a professional message, and it's boring as piss. Do you know what I mean? You're just like, fucking no one's fucking listening. No one cares. Do you know what I mean? You need to inject a little bit of personality, because people buy from people. People love the storyteller. They love that narrative. That's how we tell stories. It's not as old as Jesus Christ. Do you know what I mean? We tell stories. Through messages, through stories. That's what we do. And that's people like yourself are a great example for it.
Yeah, I thank you. And I thought you could, if let's have let's take stock of the reality of a leaflet drop campaign for smoke alarms, right? They post 100,000 through a door. How many of them go immediately in a bin? There's no real attention paid to the message about testing them regularly. Don't take the batteries out. You know, if you haven't got them, get them. If you want to get them from the local fire service, they can probably provide them and install them for free. All of that stuff. It's a fucking leaflet. It's a pain in the arse, goes in a recycling bin, right?
Yeah.
That's the reality of leaflet dropping. I felt that I had an amazing opportunity to use the book and its context to deliver the same message, but you couldn't, you know, you've spent fucking $18.99 on the book. You're not going to put it in the bin like you would a leaflet. Do you know what I mean? And I felt that that you would see the book, and every time you saw it and read Up in Smoke, Stories from a Life on Fire, you'd be immediately fucking taken back to the footnote that says, go and fucking press your button on your smoke alarm. Yeah. Go and test it. If it doesn't
work, almost the message that needs to be out there. Just press it once a month or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because people would listen and they go, oh, you know what I mean? Like, think about your CPR videos. When bloody Vinnie Jones did that, that fucking absolutely blew up, didn't it? And everyone was like, staying alive. That's it. CPR. That changed more than probably any CPR video before. We had a recent guest on the podcast, Gareth Smith, G Smith. He's on Instagram. He's got like 44,000 followers, and he's no less or more or less important than any of us. But he's just a bit of a funny guy. He speaks a lot about mental health. He's had massive challenges, tries to take his own life once, and he's a funny guy. He wears a fucking wig. He's a bold firefighter in his fucking late 40s, and his whole thing is about testing his smoke alarm. But he does some funny shit. And he does it in his pump bays and all this sort of stuff. And he's just having a fucking laugh.
Oh, that's good.
And he's not audited or he's not got a producer. He's not got nothing. He's just fucking about. And the message he gets across, some of his TikToks and stuff reach millions of people. Millions of people. And most people would never have the balls to just be that honest and that simple and that. He's a fucking great guy. And that's what I'm saying. It's so sad, though, that people like yourself, like him, like all the people I try and hunt out for the podcast have had to do these things almost outside. And it's something we spoke about yesterday. You and I don't speak about what services that we belong to. Our views are our own. But also, how sad is that? Because I feel like the fire services are operating separate from the people that are in them. How fucking sad is that?
There's a lot of fear, isn't there? There's a lot of fear that, you know, some people have ruined it for others. A lot of people have ruined it for others, where their social media content has been detrimental or damaging to a reputation of a service. And there's almost like this, right, okay, we're going to draw a massive fat line under it all, and none of it. No one can do anything. Zero, zilch, nada, nothing. No engagement. We don't trust our people to engage, and we don't trust our people to protect and look after our brand because they're going to be representing us. And you think, fuck, that's a real opportunity missed. Because with the right education, with the right, I don't know, let's call it policy. If you've got a policy that's been agreed, or guidance, as we like to call it now, if it's been agreed and there's an understanding, and you provide education and you provide the tools to have positive, constructive, sometimes serious, sometimes funny information, you're fucking missing a trick. And I post stuff on my socials often about smoke alarms, the importance of not charging your mobile phones under your duvets, under your pillows. Don't go out leaving your washing machine or tumble dryer on, or overloading a tumble dryer. Hundreds of different subjects, and I post them onto my Facebooks and my Twitters, and I get people at work take the piss and like, what are you fucking posting all that shit up for? I'm like, it would be wrong of me not to. Right? Because not all of my friends are firefighters. You're all taking the piss because you know what I'm saying. However,
obviously the people that take the piss, it's not for them anyway. They were never going to fucking like it. They were never going to buy your book. That's not your fucking audience. And those are often the people as well, where you know where they go like, oh mate, you want to be careful. Don't you remember Dave got that level 3 and lost his job? And you're like, yeah, but Dave was a prick. Dave was a twat, and actually he lost his job because he posted a job of an incident, but which wasn't the problem. It's because the next day he said that Donald Trump's a cunt. That's what lost him his job. It was nothing to do with what he was sharing about this. And that's what the problem is. The people that get it wrong are usually because they're a bloody moron or they're a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not the people that are sincerely trying to do things for make a positive change like yourself.
No, and for all the piss taking that goes on, and I accept it. Listen, my dad made a very good point right at the beginning of this podcast of what all firefighters
Absolutely.
are, and it's acceptable for the most part. The feedback that comes back from the messages is like, oh, thank you for posting that, because that's something I'm guilty of, and I'm not going to do that in the future. And I think just one piece of it, just one person coming back to me on one safety message, and knowing how different they're going to behave in the future around that message, that's all I wanted. That's all I've done it for. And if it's 2, brilliant. If it's 20, fucking amazing. You know, it's for me, having that knowledge, it is wrong for me in my position with the social media presence that I have. I'm not an influencer, but just having a number of people.
Social media, everyone's got a voice now. That's the beauty of it. And you should use it for that, because most people that think it's fucking boring have never experienced what you or many other firefighters have, where you turn up to somebody's house and they're fucking dead. Yeah. They're dead.
Yep.
And the smoke alarm didn't work, or they didn't have one, or they didn't close their doors at night, or they tried to make it out and they couldn't find their fucking keys to get out of the house, or whatever it might be. And you just think, am I willing to look like a bit of a dick? Is the cost of looking like a bit of a dick worth getting this message out? Yeah, absolutely is. And that's what I always think with the podcast. I'm like, I'll probably sound like a twat half the time. I get things wrong. I misquote things. I forget a policy or a procedure, or I sound like I don't know what I'm on about. That's absolutely fine. I'm here I'm learning out loud. That's what I always call the podcast. I'm here happy to be the dick so that people like yourself can share that message, or we can get that across the line. Because when people hear it and they go, yeah, you know what I mean, I heard this guy Leigh, or I heard this guy Pete, or whoever, and now I'm going to make a bit of a change because I heard that story of that person that lost their life, or when they're pulling the family out, and wearing seatbelts or not, drinking and driving. The amount, you turn up to some incidents and you think, that's where the dark humour has to come in, because you're like, well, they've fucked this up, haven't they? Because the person in the passenger seat's dead. And people go, oh, you really say that when you pull up? And you're like, well, yeah, we have an assessment. We realise they're dead. And then basically we're just going to come back a little bit later and cut them out. But that's the moment where you have a look around and you go, Jesus, what the fuck were they thinking coming into this corner? And as much as people think it's offensive or it's not what it's about, but those are the messages that need to come, where you go, this was an unknown road. That was a blind corner. Look at this overgrown hedge on the left-hand side. You know what I mean? What were they thinking coming into this? Look at their fucking bold tyres. Do you know what I mean? When was this vehicle last serviced? The fucking lights weren't even working.
Cool. I know.
Saves people's lives, though.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. And I think sometimes you can. I think the being a little bit rawer, is that a word?
Yeah.
Is better than pussyfooting around the truth.
Yeah.
You have to emphasize the harsh realities sometimes. You remember you don't see them anymore, and I don't fucking know why, because people will be offended. You remember the no seatbelts wearing in the back, and the kid bounces through, and
there was some great bloody graphic.
Gory, wasn't it?
Yeah,
gory, and it was like fuck. It was, and I challenge anyone not to get in a car immediately after that advert and think, I'm not going to put a seatbelt on. Or your kids are in the back. It's like, if you're driving a car, you turn around and go, put your fucking seatbelt on. I don't want you in the back of my head.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you needed. But then you also
don't do it now.
You needed somebody sincere. You needed some firefighter that's forgotten about all the EDI training, that completely missed the bloody public speaking class, just to be sat on the end of that, just being fucking raw and honest. Not somebody from whatever department. I'm not going to say anything because somebody will get offended, but I'm like, someone going, hi, I'm so-and-so from the service as this. We're encouraging everybody, oh, fuck off, I'm not listening anymore. You want the 25-year firefighter who says, it's less funny when you're wiping the kid's blood off the fucking windscreen because you're trying to cut their parent out the front, but there's bits of the fucking kid's arm in the front because they were sat them in the middle where they shouldn't have sat them. Or, you're ever quite sure what happens to a child's face when it hits a fucking airbag? Can you really quite imagine it? Imagine throwing a melon at a wall. Yeah, it's a little bit like that, but you can't really tell if the child was a boy or a girl.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's not a fucking joke. Yeah, and that's where people are like, oh, yeah, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not really fucking getting this, are you?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's where I think that's sadly. But why? Why have we ended up here? Why is it? Is it because people are deemed to be more offendable? I don't know. It's an interesting how we've become less honest,
Mm.
and having a less favourable outcome.
Mm.
I don't think when we have visits to the fire station from Scouts, Cubs, Beavers, Rainbows, Girl Guides, whatever it is, whoever's coming, we kind of pitch it at the age group.
Mm.
We try and traumatize them, but not enough that they can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be going into young adulthood and fucking in no time at all becoming 17 and passing their driving test, and they're going to be, the parents are going to be waving goodbye to them and thinking, worried sick, especially those from emergency service backgrounds, because they know what a 17-year-old driving sometimes looks like. I think we have a duty of care when they come and they're impressionable young adults or adolescents, that we fucking tell them, when you're 17 and you go out and drive your first car and you're showing off to your mates, this is the sort of equipment that we're going to be cutting you out of cars with, and sometimes you or your friends might not make it,
or the people you hit. That's usually the thing. Do you know what I mean? It's the mum coming back.
They sit there and it's like,
she's worked a double shift and then come to school late to pick up her kids after their football practice, and she's just on her way home because she's got to get home to feed the fucking 16-year-old who's been by themselves all day.
Yeah.
And she fucking comes into you because you've just pulled out of McDonald's and you're fucking picking up speed, doing a lap round the town, and you fucking smash straight into her and her two kids, and the kids she's looking after from someone else's parents as well, and they die. Yeah. That's the bit that people forget as well. How much trust you're placing in people when all that's separating you is a bloody 4-inch white line. Yeah. That's it, between you and every other crazy bastard on the road.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
All right. There is.
And I think, I try and do my best to leave them feeling startled but not petrified. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just give them enough of a seed to be sown that they'll remember that visit.
Yeah.
And when they get in their car that first time and their mates go, oh yeah, see how fast you can go. See how fast it goes. It's got 130 on the clock. Does it do 130? And he thinks, oh, fuck off, mate. I had that visit at the fire station 4 years ago, and I've seen the shit that they use to cut people out. And just, if you can just have that influence in that moment that changes a decision later on, I think that's the duty of care you have as in our positions as firefighters, to send those messages. It's so important, community engagement at any age.
I'm conscious of time, but I wanted to just speak a little bit because I'm really eager to. We spoke about this before, but I'd actually love to have you back on the podcast for another chat at some point.
Cheers.
Because we referenced it earlier. But I wanted to come back because I've had a number of counselling and all that sort of support as I went through some addictions earlier in my life. And then that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of human psychology, personal development, and also some of the stuff I now do with mental health awareness and trim practitioner, all that sort of stuff. I know you yourself, your family, your colleagues have been through a variety of different journeys. And I know we spoke about staying around the right sort of people and staying optimistic, but how much has your ability to develop a little bit of self-awareness, or maybe awareness in your closed circle of family and friends and things like that, in terms of your mental health, and how have you managed that? If you've got any strategies or techniques, or when you realized you needed a bit of support or help with it.
My first experience of feeling broken happened many years ago, maybe 2005. Where I went some real horrific incidents, and they all, you probably agree that they seem to come quite thick and fast. You have none for a while, and then bang, fucking one a week or one every month for a few months, and it's the accumulative effect. And I think you kind of think, oh, I'm all right, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'll get on with it. It's my job. That's what I have to do. And early on in my career, occupational health teams they were there. I'm not sure they were called something else. Can't remember. But you
Human resources. I
yeah,
think there
that's
was
right.
just
Yeah,
RKL. If
yeah, it was just
you had somebody that came and did your fitness tests, and then there was
yeah,
human resources, there was
yeah,
nowhere
yeah.
really in between.
No, there wasn't. And there was, and if you felt, if you felt that at that time, if you felt you needed help, you had to go and pay for it yourself.
Yeah.
And you had to go and find someone, and who do you go to? Who's trustworthy? Who would understand you? And quite often it's too much to fucking consider, so I won't even bother. Which is obviously where the cumulative effect and not managing those moments can creep up on you. And I think 2015, I had some real dark moments in my life, and I fortunately found music and DJing, and I felt it was at the time it was good for me because it was something different. It was away from work, and it was like a distraction. It was calming, and it almost felt like therapy itself. It opened up a new social circle, a new kind of identity, and passion. As you know, with my production set up here at home, it's I become quite a creative person, but it was wallpaper over the cracks.
Okay.
It was just, like I said, a distraction, and it wasn't until a real horrific incident, which I can't go into because it will identify where I'm from.
Yeah.
But it was like fucking emotional overload. It was just so overwhelming that I had to reach out for help. And I did that through my occupational health team, who were amazing. They referred me to a therapist, and we went down many conversations. And when you feel, I felt at the time, I've fucked this up, because my dad never needed therapy, and he'd done 30 years. My granddad never spoke about therapy. He'd done 30 years. My uncle, bless him, before he died of cancer at 34 years of age, which is no age at all, he never spoke about therapy. And I'm like, I've let everyone down. I've let myself down. I've let the fire service down. I've let my family heritage down, that I haven't been able to get through this.
Yeah.
But having gone down the route of therapy, and then talking to my dad, who never really spoke about it, and then have him be honest, and me realize, fucking hell, he struggled as well.
Yeah.
But why did he not say it? Was it different back in the 80s and 90s, where it was more bravado and bullshit, that you had to have this facade because you were taking the piss out of, as firefighters generally do. And I'm glad that societal opinion and feeling towards mental health has changed, because it cliche, it's okay not to be okay, has enabled people to reach out and say, I can't do this on my own, I need help, whether that's to their friends or family or teams or employers, that you are able to access the correct help. And for me, I went down the route of therapy, was just about to embark on EMDR to reset myself on some of the things, and then COVID hit. And I talk about this in much greater depth in the book. And EMDR can only be done face to face. My therapist over a Zoom call said, "We can't do it, Leigh." And I was like, fucking COVID, I felt like I was making so much progress, and then bang, I felt like I was going to regress. I felt like I was going to, all this hard work and self-awareness and reflection and managing my feelings and emotions was going to be dashed. And then I was absolutely blessed, from a friend of a friend, to be introduced to a lady called Jackie Wilmshurst. And she is a risk psychologist with an incredible history of working with many organizations, namely the BBC war journalists, and training journalists in resilience to emotional trauma and risk before they're exposed to it.
What's her name? Jackie
Wilmshurst.
You'll have to put me in contact with Jackie. I think she'd make for an incredible guest.
She is just a legend among human beings. And she developed a program called Managing Psychological Safety, or MAPS for short. And this program of taking trauma or exposure to trauma and experience and revisiting it and breaking it down into manageable pieces, rather than feeling like you have to manage the whole thing at once and it being so overwhelming that you get nowhere. And just being able to take each emotion, be it like, what did you see? Let's talk about what you saw, and let's just manage that, just that small part. And then all of the different, smells, sounds.
What did you smell? What did you hear? What did you think was going to happen next?
Everything. And you actually break the whole moment down into small, manageable pieces and deal with them, understand them, process them, and wrap them up, package them up. And, that's that one done. And by doing each thing in such a prescribed way, enabled me to get over that massive, massive incident, enabled me to revisit the others, all the accumulative experiences that I've had, and reprocess those things that I'd perhaps tucked away and not bothered to deal with. I came from a very, very dark place for the benefit of Jackie.
Do you think you'd still be in the job if you didn't do that?
Would I? Geez. Yeah, but I don't know how healthy I would be. I don't know. And it's all about experience, isn't it? And understanding where you've not that struggling is doing something wrong, because that's absurd, but struggling because you haven't got the right tools. You haven't got the
struggling
right
is good because you learn tools. You learn that you need some more stuff. You want to start knocking down the fucking wall and then go, tell you what, use this fucking fork and spoon that I grabbed out of the cutlery drawer. It's not going to be enough. I better go to the hardware shop and get a bit more resourceful and learn some new methods.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean that I can never get over this wall or never rebuild these foundations. Just means I need to learn how to use some different tools. Yeah,
for sure. And I think just having the benefit of having that resilience building with Jackie gave me some incredible tools for personal reflection and management of my emotions, but being able to influence and help others as well, and recognize when people can benefit from that
fucking absolutely.
And it isn't until you can only do that with knowing your team intimately and making the time to find out what makes them tick. Recognize when they're having a bad day, and being able to just say, "You all right? Do you want a cup of tea?" And they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that'd be nice." And a cup of tea will just open a dialogue, and it's being able to have those soft people skills is incredible.
And but also just sharing your own challenges, because they act as like an opening, an entry point for other people.
And that is exactly why I made a massive, and it was never going to be an aspect of the book, Mental Health and Awareness. It was going to be a funny book,
Well, it is a funny book as well, to be fair.
Yeah, of course, I know. but it had to, and I thought it has to be in there.
Yeah.
But where do I put it? And I thought I'd rather it be pretty much at the end, because people, it's the I want them to remember that it was a funny book, but the biggest message I want out of it is like, wow.
Yeah.
If he has come through such an ordeal and is still here, being able to write a funny book I'll get influence from that. I'll get inspiration.
That's what humanizes it for me towards the end of the book. And it takes away almost all aspects of that you being an emergency services operator or anything like that, because those things that you speak about struggling with are relatable to any person from any background, because you don't have to be a firefighter to face personal challenges with your own mental health.
Sure. And one of the things I've been pushing recently, and sadly, very sadly, got nowhere with. I'm trying to still knock down walls, but I've asked my employer to refocus their attention on mental health and the awareness of it, because my position now, with the benefit of Jackie's training, education, is resilience building. There'll always be a place for occupational health. There'll always be a place for trim. There'll always be a place and need for mental health first aiders. But that's at this end. The damage is done. You're you're broken, you're affected, you're hurt, you're struggling. That's when you need OC health, trim, and mental health first aiders. Let's fucking focus our attention on brand new people in the job at this end of their career, right? Let's give them fucking resilience, right? That they won't fucking need trim or mental health first aiders. Or
that's the thing for me, mate. As soon as you come into the job, you have a fitness test, and I'm like, you should also be given the opportunity to sit with a professional of some form or somebody that's had that training and go through some form of psychological profiling, or just to begin to explore how to have conversations around those challenging aspects. Because, and even if you are, sitting at the higher levels of services, and your argument is, you any fucking idea how expensive that is, Pete? Right. Well, you do know how expensive it is to have people off the fucking run for mental health. So the cost to benefit ratio is there, and it's a long process, I appreciate. But if we just made it a regular thing, if you have an annual fitness test or biannual fitness test, well, we should also be having that annual check-in from somebody in that role, or people in areas that have been given the opportunity to have that training, and make it mandatory. Make it, you've got to go and have those conversations, because then it's almost like a pressure release valve for me.
Sure. And I think if you're before you're not before you're given the opportunity to be employed, but right at the beginning, when you have got the opportunity to say, do you know what, this isn't for me. Right. This isn't for me. And I think if you're, I believe, and it's only my personal opinion, that all recruit firefighters should spend a few days in theatre in hospital, right? And they should bear witness to what a human body looks like open
when it's gone through trauma.
Yeah. They should be allowed to have that controlled environment where they can dip in and out as they wish.
I remember we used to take people to the morgue as well. There's a couple of services used to do that. Used to take people to morgues and funeral homes and stuff like that, just to give them that bit of exposure.
But nowadays,
and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, and I'm sure there's different ways to do it, but it was just a method. I'm sure there was some damage done in the wrong way in certain places, but I think our approach of throwing the baby out with the bathwater again is not an ideal solution.
No way. And I think you can do this in a controlled way, because it is fucking wrong that a brand new recruit gets stuck on a fire engine, and the very first time they see a body at its worst exploded, underneath the back of a lorry in a car. That shouldn't be the fucking first time they see a body in bits. Should not. And if you look at, I asked my service to do a risk assessment of exposure to trauma. Because if you know what a risk matrix looks like when you do the risk and the control measures, and the is it going to be what is the outcome if you haven't got a control measure? Is it going to be a catastrophic outcome? Fucking course it is.
How many things can we put in that control measure box? Not fucking many. We're not doing much about it. We know the outcome, and we know the risk and the likelihood, because you could tally all that straight across from people's exposures and the amount of fatalities that we face, and the variety of them, from suicides to unfortunate accidents to intentionals and to arsons and murder and all that sort of stuff. You'd fill those boxes up quite fast. When we go into preventative measures, what control measures have we put in place? Not very many.
No.
We've put a lot in the old shit box, which is, oh, well, after it happens, we'll do this. They're off on the fucking sick by then.
Yeah, I think there has to be a shift in attitude, and I'm a cynic, and I wonder, again, personal opinion only, that this is not on an agenda because there aren't any key performance indicators related to it.
Yeah, it's a strange
services much like schools and Ofsted.
But I think we could force some of those KPIs in from sickness due to stress and mental health.
Sure.
I think you could use that as a KPI.
Yeah, but it takes strong people and strong voices, and that's what I hope will come of the book. More and more people will read it. More and more people will have greater expectation, not just from fire service backgrounds, but greater expectations of their employers, whatever they are. It's like, you should be doing more for us. At the end of the day, that's what I hope to get out of it. It's a big subject, and we lose a lot of people to mental health, whether it be just leaving the job because they can't do it anymore, ill health, retirement, or the very sad reality is suicides. And I wonder, I asked someone this the other day, how many, I'd like to, we all hear about firefighters that die through death related through incidents. The Fire Brigades Union are doing these incredible red plaques now to remember those firefighters that are lost in the line of duty. But we need to be, I wonder how many firefighters up and down the country are lost due to suicide because of mental health issues. That must be a staggering number. I know of many in my service. You mentioned one earlier in yours recently. I think the numbers would be scary, and I think when you look at that collective number, that's when employers should go, fuck, it's a big thing.
I'm conscious of time at the minute, and I know that we want to come back and continue with this because I've loved every second of it, to be honest with you. Before we go, what's the best place for people? We're going to stick the link in the podcast notes as well, but if people want to find out a little bit more from you, where can they go on different platforms and stuff like that to find you?
I've got a Facebook page. That's Leigh Hosy-Pickett. There's Twitter, which is @Hosy-Pickett. Many people have taken a piss out of that surname. It's like you couldn't get a more socialist firefighting surname, could you? Hosy-Pickett. Hosy's my French wife's surname, which I adopted when we got married. But yeah, Hosy's HOSY_Pickett, PICKETT. That's Twitter. I'm very active on that. Those are my main platforms. There is a Instagram page as well, which is Leigh Hosy-Pickett. Again, I think that's Leigh_Hosy_Pickett on Insta. LinkedIn in that as well.
Beautiful. We're going to put those links in the notes below. The book itself, website, Amazon, where's the best place to get it?
For me, Amazon, it's interesting. It's the journey of understanding publishing a book and what works and what doesn't. Amazon is a great place to get it. You can get it very quickly, but one significant thing about Amazon is you're able to leave a review. Most of the other places you can get it, Waterstones, Foils, the big Booktopia, Big Green Bookshop. There's a stack of places, WH Smith, whatever tickles your fancy. You can you get it from, or you can download it, the audio version, which I recorded.
Well done, my friend.
Yeah, it took a while. Do you know what? Listening to, I don't mind the sound of my own voice, as you can probably imagine. But talking for 14 hours over 3 days was fucking hard work.
Yeah, man, 100%. Well done for doing it, though.
Yeah, the vibration that just talking for that amount of time creates in your head is quite something. But yeah, really pleased with that as well. So I've got an hour's journey to work, so I love audiobooks. So that's available to download on Audible as well. But yeah, preferably Amazon, because a review can be left. Reviews are really important to books. I'm blessed have got some incredible celeb reviews on Amazon under the editorial reviews section at the bottom of
I saw page. Russell Brand, yeah.
Yeah, Russell Brand. There's Mark Williams, Thomas. There's Nick Knowles.
Yeah.
There's stacks more to go on there. They're coming thick and fast at the moment.
Good man. Well done.
Yeah. I'm really blessed for the opportunity, Pete. It's been a blast.
I would love for us to come back on in the new year.
Absolutely.
And kind of shoot the shit about where you're at and how everything's going.
Yeah, I think a lot's going to happen, isn't it, between now and then? We've got a potential looming industrial dispute coming.
We're having the FBO on to talk about that. They're coming on in the next couple of weeks.
That's good.
That'll be an interesting kettle of fish.
Yeah, really interesting.
Other unions also exist because some people are questionable about how good or bad our unions are for us. So there's an interesting conversation to be had there as well. I'm a fucking devil's advocate. I'm here to have those conversations. But yeah, man, good. I know you and I are at different chapters in our careers as well, and we've still got adventures that we want to have. And fingers crossed, they may cross paths at some point as well, which would be exciting.
I hope so. Sounds
Beautiful.
Good. Thanks.
Send me all those links, mate. We'll put them in the notes below this. Send my love to your beautiful family. Thank them for this time, taking you away for a selfish couple of hours of a bit of banter. I've absolutely loved it, mate. And look forward to catching up soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Pete.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.